Yes. Let's have a look upon the second facet, that is the making of Indian Constitution. The making of Indian Constitution. See, during the freedom struggle, the voice from across different corners was raised to draft the Constituent Assembly of India in order to formulate Indian Constitution. But out of the different sorts of voices raised from across different corners of society those days, for the first time in year 1934, the voice raised by an individual was taken into account, but that didn't carry out any substantial impact upon the mindset of the Britishers. Anyway, that individual's voice mattered a lot. That was basically the voice raised by Mr. M.N. Roy in year 1934. In year 1934, an individual, Mr. M.N. Roy, he was basically the proponent of communist movement in India, chief proponent of communist movement in India. He raised the voice that a constituent assembly is the need of the hour to formulate the Indian Constitution. But on his voice or on his demand of formulating Constituent Assembly, the Britishers were not much heeded upon. But 1 year later, in year 1935, similar kind of demand was raised from behalf of an institutional arrangement, and that is basically the Indian National Congress. So, in year 1935, Indian National Congress, made the demand for the same, that is to formulate a Constituent Assembly to draft Indian Constitution, and the voice raised by INC, it carried out impact over the mindset of the Britishers, and the Britishers accepted this demand in year 1940 during the August of so the demand of the Indians to formulate a Constituent Assembly in order to draft Indian Constitution was taken into consideration by the British authority those days in year 1940 via means of August Offer of 1940. Okay. Later on, in year 1942, Cripps Mission Plan came out. Cripps Mission Plan, and this Cripps Mission Plan was basically the strategical brainchild of Sir Stafford Cripps. Those days he used to be an important member of British cabinet. So Mr. Cripps had laid out a proper plan, or he had sketched out a proper plan that in what manner the Constituent Assembly of India would be formulated, what would be its composition, what would be its mode of representation in the Constituent Assembly, all such things. But because of some sort of anomalies or irregularities, you can say, it was not considered. And the main reason of not accepting the Cripps Mission Plan was basically the dissatisfaction of Mr. Jinnah towards this plan. Mr. Jinnah had explicitly opposed the Cripps Mission Plan because he wanted a separate Constituent Assembly to be formulated for the state of Pakistan. Okay, and Cripps Mission Plan was based upon formulating the single Constituent Assembly, and that would be for the the Constituent Assembly for India. Okay, so because of some sort of differences raised from the side of Muslim League in general and Mr. Jinnah In particular, Scripps mission plan finally got into failure. Okay. Anyway, after 4 years, in year 1946, cabinet mission plan came out, and via means of this cabinet mission plan, you know, the way was paved to formulate the Constituent Assembly. And this cabinet mission plan was by and large even acceptable to Mr. Jinnah himself. Mr. Jinnah had also accepted the layout shown via means of cabinet mission plan in order to formulate the Constituent Assembly of India. Okay. The reason was simple. Though the cabinet mission plan was also not making the provision for separate Constituent Assembly for Pakistan, still it was acceptable to Mr. Jinnah because it makes the proper provision for separate electorate for the Muslims in Constituent Assembly. Okay. So there was a system of a bit of communal representation in the Constituent Assembly according to cabinet mission plan. So it was overall acceptable to Mr. Jinnah, and according to this cabinet mission plan, now it was made clear that India is going to formulate its own Constituent Assembly in order to write Indian Constitution. Okay. Now the things which should be taken into account by you guys are, what are the different aspects related to the cabinet mission plan in order to formulate Constituent Assembly. Okay. Means what are the plan layouts shown by cabinet mission. See, this cabinet mission plan was solely dedicated towards how to formulate the Constituent Assembly, what would be the composition of the Constituent Assembly, whether the Constituent Assembly would be a representative institution, or it should be of some other kind. Okay. If the representation is to be ensured in the Constituent Assembly, what would be the mode to show the representation, whether the representatives are to be elected directly or indirectly, apart from the elected representatives, whether there would be any possibility of nominated representatives or not. Okay. How the election would be performed in order to elect the representatives from different assemblies. Okay. And what would be the basis for electing the representative from different assemblies. All such things were clearly enumerated via means of cabinet mission plan of 1946. So some of the important points which were inherent in cabinet mission plan I am going to show in front of you. First thing you need to remember is there should be a 389 members Constituent Assembly. 389 members Constituent Assembly. Okay. Second remarkable point to be noted here is this Constituent Assembly would be comprised of elected representatives as well as the nominated representatives. Okay. Elected representatives would come from the British India provinces. Okay. British India provinces. And the capacity of British India provinces would be taken into account as per the basis of the Government of India Act of 1935. Okay. Means whatever the strength of different legislative assemblies which have already been decided by a means of the Government of India Act of 1935, same will be taken into account in due course of electing representative for the Constituent Assembly. Okay. So on the basis of Government of India Act of 1935, the strength of, remember this point, the strength of the representatives, or rather you can say the strength of the provincial assemblies would be streamlined. Okay. Anyway, so the provision for elected as well as nominated, both the kinds of representative were made via means of the cabinet mission plan of 1946. Okay. See, elected representative will come from British India provinces, while nominated representatives will come from princely states. Princely states. Okay. See, this election would be of indirect kind. Indirect election means the elected representative would be basically the indirectly elected representative, and each representative will represent a mass of 10 lakh population. Okay. So, every representative out of 1 million population, and the total number of elected representative would be 296, right, 296, while the total number of nominated representatives would be 93. Is it okay to all of you? Fine. See, these 296 will be bifurcated into the form of 292 plus 4. 292 plus 4. Though all these 296 representatives would come from the British India provinces, but out of all these representatives, 4 representatives would have to represent the commissionerate provinces. Okay, commissionerate provinces. And those days the commissionerate provinces were from every commissionerate provinces, one representative would have to show the representation. First one was Delhi, second one was Ajmer Marwala, third one was Coorg, and fourth one was British Balochistan. Okay, Balochistan. So from these 4 commissionerate provinces, there were altogether 4 representatives, and 292 representatives were there from different British India provinces. In this way, there was a provision of altogether 296 elected representatives. Look, 296 plus 93, don't you think it will result in 389? Fine. So, elected representatives would have to be elected indirectly. Each and every representative would have to show the representation of at least 10 lakh population, that is 1 million population. Nominated representatives would be nominated via means of their respective princely heads. Okay. So, these nominated representatives would be nominated by their respective princely heads. Princely heads. Okay, fine. One thing more. Yes, 296 members, 93. And see, the election for the Constituent Assembly of India, or in other words, you can say the election for all the 296 representatives for the Constituent Assembly of India was held according to the provisions given in Cabinet Mission Plan, and broadly 2 political parties were participated into the contest. One was Indian National Congress and other was Muslim League. Okay. So, out of the election for 296 seats for the Constituent Assembly of India, have a look, 296 seats. It can be divided into Indian National Congress, Muslim League and third one is for independent candidates. Independent candidates. See, 208 seats were owned by the Indian National Congress. Muslim League got a total of you can say 73 seats, right? 73 seats were owned by Muslim League, while independent candidates got victory over 15 seats. In this way, let's have a sum of 208, 73 plus 15. Fine, it is 296. Okay, yes. So these were the seats, owned by different political parties as well as different independent candidates. Fine. And all these elections were taken place only on the basis of how an indirect mode of election. An indirect mode of election is always comprised of proportional representation and single transferable voting system. It was something very much akin to nowadays election to the upper house of the parliament, or you can say election to the office of the President of India. Because in India, the President of India as well as the members of Rajya Sabha and of course the members of some members of legislative councils of states, if any bicameral legislature prevails in a state, that is taken place according to indirect election only. So proportional representation as well as single transferable voting system, were followed in due course of electing the members of Constituent Assembly. Fine. If possible, you can remember this data, Anyway, see, on 9th December 1946, the Constituent Assembly of India was made for the first time, means the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly of India was held on December 9, 1946. See, according to chronological order, we have seen the development made in year 1934. We have also seen the development made in year 1935. We have seen the development of 1940. We have also seen the development of 1942 in the form of Cripps Mission Plan. And again, we have seen the development of 1946, that is Cabinet Mission Plan, and according to this plan only, the Constituent Assembly of India was formulated. Okay. See, in year 1946, December 9, the first meeting of Constituent Assembly of India was held. The first meeting of Constituent Assembly of India was held, first meeting. Okay. And in this meeting, Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, the greatest veteran of Constituent Assembly, was elected as interim president of Constituent Assembly. Interim president. Interim president is someone who presides over the meetings of an institution till a permanent arrangement is made for the designation of the president of that institution. Okay. 2 days later, on December 11, 1946, okay, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as, the permanent president of the Constituent Assembly of India. Fine. One more date is very much important, and that is December 13, 1946. On this particular date, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, has introduced, the objective resolution on the floor of the Constituent Assembly of India, which was later on passed on 22nd of January 1947, and it ultimately took the shape of preamble to the Constitution of India. Objective resolution was basically a document, a plan, which emphasizes that in what manner the Constitution of India was to be formulated. What would be the philosophy which need to be embedded in the Constitution of India? How the ideals and aspirations of the people of India should have to be maintained via means of the different constitutional provisions. What would be the aspect of individual rights to be assigned via means of the Constitution of India? Okay. In what purpose or in what manner the Constitution of India would function in order to provide dynamic approach to the governments of the days or the governments of the coming days. Okay. How the governments of the days will function in order to uphold the degree of welfare orientation of Indian state. All such things were, though in brief, inserted in that objective resolution. Okay. It was finally passed by the Constituent Assembly of India on which date? January 22nd, 1947, and later on it was provided the shape of preamble to the Constitution of India. Preamble to the Constitution of India. Is it okay? So, in this way, the date 13th of December 1946 becomes very much important, because this was the date, which makes the background for the preamble of Indian Constitution. Fine. See, in first meeting of Constituent Assembly of India, which took place in year 1946, dated 9th December, remember, Muslim League boycotted that meeting. Means first meeting of Constituent Assembly of India was boycotted by Muslim League. Even so many princely states had also denied to take part in the meeting of Constituent Assembly of India. Anyway, Mr. B.N. Rao, he was elected as the legal advisor of the Constituent Assembly of India. Mr. Rao was legal advisor of Constituent Assembly of India, right. On June 3, 1947, June 3, 1947, remember, Mountbatten Plan came out. Mountbatten Plan came out. It is popularly known as the June Plan, and this plan was, basically to bifurcate the India or divide the India into the form of two different dominions. One was the dominion of India and other was the dominion of Pakistan. Means partition of India was ensured. Partition of India was ensured via means of this June Plan or Mountbatten Plan, and accordingly the Constituent Assembly of India would also have to be divided. Why? Because the representatives of those areas which were now to be inducted under the dominion of Pakistan, don't you think they would no longer remain the members of the Constituent Assembly of India, because the Constituent Assembly of India was crafted on inclusive basis or holistic basis. It was basically for the undivided India, but even without the accomplishment of the task, means the Constituent Assembly of India was basically constituted in order to accomplish the task of constitution writing. Before completing the task of constitution writing for India, if even India was to be divided, then it is obvious that the Constituent Assembly of undivided India would also have to be divided. So, for undivided India, as you have seen that the total strength of the Constituent Assembly which was decided by the Cabinet Mission Plan was basically 389. But now the members of Indian Constituent Assembly who have to, or rather who had to defect in favor of Pakistan, okay, they would remain no longer the member of this Constituent Assembly. So here a statement type question is always asked that the members which were reduced from the Constituent Assembly of undivided India, they were coming from which regions? It is obvious that they could be coming from only those regions which were to be defected or included under the dominion of Pakistan. So, the members representing the areas like East Bengal, West Punjab, Sindh, Northwest Front, NWFP you can say, Northwest Frontier Province, and of course the member of Sylhet district of Assam. Sylhet district of Assam. They were remained no more or no longer the members of Constituent Assembly of India. Means in Indian Constituent Assembly, out of these 389 members, those members who were representing these areas, namely East Bengal, nowadays Bangladesh, West Punjab, that is Pakistani Punjab, Sindh, Northwest Frontier Province, and Sylhet district of Assam, they were later on reduced from this strength, and in this way, after their reduction or after their removal or after their defection, only 299 members were left in Indian Constituent Assembly after partition. Only 299 members. It means a total of 90 members from undivided Constituent Assembly of India were defected, and they were tilted in favor of Pakistan. The reason is simple. The reason is they were representing the areas which were to be included under the dominion of Pakistan. Fine. So, 90 members were deducted from this 389 members Constituent Assembly of Undivided India. So, finally, the total number of members left out in Indian Constituent Assembly was basically 299 members. Okay. One more point. In Indian Constituent Assembly, okay, there were a total of 15 women members. How many women members? 15 women members. And out of these 15 women members, the only Muslim woman member was Miss, or rather you can say Begum Aizaz Rasul, right? Begum Aizaz Rasul. She was the only Muslim member or Muslim woman member in Indian Constituent Assembly. Fine. Okay. See, we can witness three different phases of Constituent Assembly of India. Okay, three different phases of Constituent Assembly of India, and in all those three different phases, the Constituent Assembly of India had performed distinct jobs or distinct roles. See, phases of Constituent Assembly of India. Phases of Constituent Assembly of India. How many phases were there? 3 different phases. First, second phase and third phase, right? The first phase of Indian Constituent Assembly was December 6, 1946. Okay, since its first meeting. And remember, in the first meeting of Indian Constituent Assembly, okay, first meeting of Indian Constituent Assembly, only 206 representatives took part. 206 representatives, 206. Anyway, December 6, 1946 to August 14, 1947. This was the first phase of Indian Constituent Assembly. Okay. See, in second phase, August 15, second phase starts from August 15, 1947 to November 26, 1949. November 26, 1949. See, November 26, 1949 was basically the date on which the Constituent Assembly of India had declared that we had adopted, enacted and given to ourselves the Constitution of India. Okay. Enacted means it was the date on which it was declared that the Constitution of India now well has been brought into legal existence. This was basically the date to show the legal existence of Indian Constitution. Okay. So, on this date only, that is November 26, 1946, Indian Constitution was brought into legal existence. And this date you can easily find by referring the text given under preamble to the Constitution of India. Going through preamble, on the bottom, it is explicitly mentioned that on this particular date, namely 26th of November 1949, we do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves the Constitution of India. Here we stands for the people of India. Anyway, third phase of India's Constituent Assembly was, it starts from November 27, 1949 to March 1952, because in 1952 only first election to the Lok Sabha was held, and from there onwards we made the provision of elected parliament. Okay. Now see, what were the roles which had been played by the Constituent Assembly of India via means of all its 3 different phases. See, during the first phase, the job of the Constituent Assembly of India, means from 1946 to 1949, sorry, 1946 to 1947, it was, December 6, 1946 to August 14, 1947, the exclusive job which was performed by the Constituent Assembly of India was to, write the Constitution. To write the Constitution means it simply functioned as being the Constituent Assembly only. It simply performed the role of Constituent Assembly. And generally, what is the role to be performed by a Constituent Assembly? Simple, to write down the Constitution, to formulate the Constitution, to draft the Constitution. So, it performed as a Constituent Assembly of India, and by it being the Constituent Assembly of India, it is obvious that its job could have been to write the Constitution. But From August 15, 1947 to November 26, 1949, the Constituent Assembly of India started functioning two different roles, or started playing two different roles. One as the Constituent Assembly and other as the interim parliament. Interim parliament. Why? Because on August 15, 1947, we have been declared as an independent state. Okay. So, it was the Constituent Assembly of India only which from its second phase started playing the role of writing the constitution in one hand and at the same time looking after the governance and administration of the country by functioning as an interim parliament on the other hand. Okay. Again, in third phase, means once the constitution writing or the job of constitution writing was accomplished on November 26, 1949. Okay. The Constituent Assembly of India was entered into its third phase, and third phase starts from November 27, 1949, and it lasts till we elect, we made the provision for elected parliament. Means first general election was held in year 1952. Anyway, before holding the first general election, okay, means particularly in this phase, that is third phase, the Constituent Assembly of India, played only the role of, it being the interim parliament only. Interim parliament only. Why? Because there was no role to play in order to write the constitution, since the constitution was already written. Constitution was already written. Why? It was even declared by the Constituent Assembly on November 26, 1949 that we had enacted our constitution. Enacted our constitution means we had brought the Constitution of India into legal existence. So, the task of constitution making has been accomplished. Anyway, is it okay to all of you? Yes. These topics are very factual, but what can you do? You have to cope the questions in your preliminary examination which are basically in objective nature only. Fine. Next, see, we have seen the chronological development of India's Constituent Assembly, till the breakout of June plan. Okay. It is known to all of us that on August 15, 1947, we got independence. Okay. 14 days after being declared as a independent state, means on August 29, 1947, it was decided to, brisk the job of constitution making. Means in the Constituent Assembly of India, it was decided to provide, a greater pace to constitution writing, and accordingly, the draft constitution making committee was, made, and that draft constitution making committee was headed by the great Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So, on August 29, 1947, draft constitution making committee was constituted or made. This draft constitution making or draft committee, basically in common parlance it is called as draft committee. Okay. So, draft constitution making committee was constituted under the leadership of, under the headship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Okay. Apart from the chairman Dr. Ambedkar, there were altogether 6 other members in this draft constitution making committee. So, this committee was basically, its composition was 1 plus 6. You can say it is a 7-member committee. One was the chairperson, that is Dr. Ambedkar, and other members which I am going to show. Have a look. one was K.M. Munshi, K.M. Munshi, N. Gopalaswamy, Iyengar, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Muhammad Sadullah, B.L. Mittar. He was substituted by N. Madhav Rao, or you can say he was later on replaced by N. Madhav Rao, because even during meanwhile he has resigned himself from the draft constitution making committee of India, and after his resignation, means resignation of Mr. Mittar, N. Madhav Rao came in. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th one was D.P. Khetan. He died meanwhile, so he was replaced by T.T. Krishna Machari. Because of the death of D.P. Khetan, he was replaced by T.T. Krishna Machari. In this way, there used to be a 7-member draft constitution making committee of India, and this was the committee only which finally provided the draft of Indian constitution. Okay. So this is how the Constitution of India was made. Some notable points which you should know is, or rather are, first one, if you look into the mode of functioning of the Constituent Assembly of India, always remember the Constituent Assembly of India was not functioning, or not not even a single decision was made by a means of Constituent Assembly of India on majority principle. Okay, so no majority principles were employed in due course of making decisions on the floor of the Constituent Assembly of India. Rather, the decisions were made via means of observing, substantial debates, discussions, etc. After going through rational debates and discussions, basically decisions were made on the basis of unanimity principles. Unanimity principles means each and every decision, was made by the Constituent Assembly of India based on unanimity. Unanimity. If no unanimity can be observed considering to make decision over a particular provision of Indian Constitution, in that situation, the Constituent Assembly of India sought to find out that type of solution which can be agreed upon by all the members of the Constituent Assembly. For example, when it came to provide the nomenclature to the Indian state, means our country, the Constituent Assembly of India, was not on a common viewpoint that what kind of name or what would be the name which need to be provided to our country. Some of the members of Constituent Assembly of India had opined that the name which need to be given to our country is basically India, while some others were of the opinion that the nomenclature of our country shall be provided in a manner like Bharat. And after a long duration discussion over the nomenclature of our country, it was decided over by the Constituent Assembly that both the names should be taken into account, because on single name, either on India or on Bharat, the entire Constituent Assembly was not agreed upon. That's why if you look into Article 1 in Part 1 of Indian Constitution, the nomenclature of our country has been provided, and in that particular text, two names have been subscribed, one India, other Bharat. here India and Bharat, they are not represented as synonyms to each other. Okay, this is basically the reflection of, you know, the ground on which our Constituent Assembly was functioning. This is basically the very good example of how well the Constituent Assembly of India was making decision as per the basis of unanimity principle. Okay, means on a single name, if the entire Constituent Assembly was not agreed upon, rather two names have been given or provided or suggested by two different chunks of, you know, members. In that situation, both the names had been taken into account. India, that is Bharat, means India and Bharat both, so that no one can say, or in future no one would say that a particular name of our country, you know, it was imposed by the majoritarian over the, you know, minority people. Here minority people does not mean to define minority on the basis of, you know, language or you can say things like religion. No, minority means two groups of people. Basically the members who are coming from southern Indian states, they were demanding that the nomenclature to be provided to our country will be India, while the North Indian members were on a viewpoint of providing the name to our country as Bharat. Okay, and the members of both the sections, they were not agreed upon on a single name, either the India or the Bharat. So finally the Constituent Assembly had adopted both the names, and the things were mentioned in a manner like India, that is Bharat. So this is how it is reflected that how the Constituent Assembly was working. Okay, so basically two principles were followed by the Constituent Assembly of India when it comes to incorporate the constitutional provisions. One was the principle of unanimity and other was the principle of coherence, and that coherence in decision was faced by a means of substantial debates and discussions. Okay, so this is all about how the Constitution of India was made. Now it's time to have a shift upon the third facet of dimension number 1, and the third facet is you know, the different landmarks of India's constitutional development. The different landmarks of India's constitutional development. See, whatever the administrative structure we find in India, don't you think it is largely the legacy of British rule in India, colonial rule in India? So the British colonial rule in India can be seen by having a look upon two different phases of colonial era. One phase can well be demarcated as the phase of, you know, the East India Company ruling, while other phase can be considered as the phase of British Crown's ruling. Okay, and see, in these two different phases, now we are going to discuss about what are the different landmarks, you know, which later on provided the basis to formulate the Constitution of India. This is the reason why I have given the name to this topic as the different landmarks of India's constitutional development. Okay, so out of the different landmarks of constitutional development, finally we formulated the Constitution of India. But in due course of formulating the Constitution of India, what were the different landmarks, you know, which were properly traced by the forefathers of our Constitution, you know, during making the Constitution of India. Okay, so look, the British rule in India can divide into two different phases, right? First phase was the company's rule, and see, basically the company's rule can be noticed, you can say, before the broke out of the revolt of 1857, because after the breaking out of revolt of 1857, the system was changed, the mode of ruling or governance was changed, means the era of company's rule was basically shifted to the era of crown's rule. So, the dividing phase was shown by a means of revolt of 1857. The demarcating line was basically the revolt of 1857. Anyway, you can say the company's rule till 1857, or you can say before 1858, till 1857 or before 1858. Second phase was started from year 1858 and it lasts till 1947, and this phase can better be expressed as the phase of crown's rules, the crown's rules. First phase is known as the company's rule till 1857 or before 1858. The second phase is known as the crown's rule from 1858 to 1957. Okay. So, by this way you can show the British rule in India, or the era of British rule in India, or the phases of British rule in India. Okay. Whatever the landmarks of constitutional development regarding India you find, that was basically shown by the Britishers only, because all such developments were taken place during the governance and administration of Britishers during the colonial government. Okay. So, it is obvious that all the different landmarks would also have been regulated via means of British mindset. Anyway, see, two different phases. Now we are going to discuss about the constitutional development during first phase, and then we will discuss the different landmarks of constitutional development during second phase. See, under first phase, first noticeable event was the Regulating Act of 1773. The Regulating Act of 1773. Second prominent landmark of constitutional development which took place during the first phase was the Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act of 1784. Pitt was basically a name of those days British Premier or British Prime Minister. He was basically Sir William Pitt, younger or junior, because his father had already served the Britain as the Prime Minister of that country. Okay. So, Sir William Pitt, younger. Third important landmark was the Charter Act of 1813. Another was the Charter Act of 1833. The Charter Act of 1833. Other one was the Government of India Act of 1853. Okay. And then we can have an entry into the second phase. In second phase, we will start with the Government of India Act of 1858, then Indian Councils Act of 1892, then Indian Councils Act of 1909, that is 1909. It is also called as Morley Minto reforms. Then it comes the Government of India Act of 1919. Okay, it is called as the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, because Montagu was, the then Secretary of State for India, and Chelmsford was the then Viceroy or Governor General, you can say. Similarly, in Morley Minto reforms, Morley was the then Secretary of State for India, that is Bharat Sachiv, and Minto was the then Governor General, or you can say Viceroy of India. Because after 1858, Government of India Act of 1858, the name of, or you can say the designation of Governor General was changed to Viceroy. We will discuss over it. Other one was, the Government of India Act of 1935, and finally India's Independence Act of 1947. Okay, see, we will have a short glimpse upon all sorts of landmarks, but the greater emphasis would be given upon the three landmarks only. One, the Indian Councils Act of 1909, that is Morley Minto reforms. Other one is the Government of India Act of 1919, that is Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. And finally, the Government of India Act of 1935, that is 1935. Okay, these three are very much important for preliminary examination, because questions, based on these particular facets, if they are asked, they are somehow related to these three developments only. Okay, so the things related to these three developments are basically no miss type things. You need to take them seriously. Yes, others can be taken for granted, no problem. Okay, so since this is our first lecture, and in second lecture, that is tomorrow, we will discuss in detail about all sorts of the given landmarks of India's constitutional development. Till then, take care. See you tomorrow. Thank you.